why is fasting made compulsory on all of us? Because it seems as if we are starving ourselves, and what's the need of depriving ourselves from essential ingredients that provide us energy? And why is it in the first place that we are asked in such a vehement way to fast for 30 days, or it's like a whole month of fasting, and it really depletes our reserves, it depletes our sources. And unless the rationale behind fasting is fully understood, perhaps it seems like a needless starvation sort of an exercise. So I'm just going to try to explain in a very brief way that what is the rationale behind fasting and what makes us so committed to this, and how we can actually enjoy fasting. It's not just a suffering that we should go through or a starvation that we should go through. It should be an enjoyable event, and it becomes enjoyable when we are able to understand why are we asked to do certain things, as I said, the wisdom behind. So you see, if you analyze yourselves, each one of us is a human being. Human beings exist on two planes. One is the physical plane or the physical realm, and the other is the spiritual realm. So we are not just mere body, as perhaps is the case with animals. We have a soul inside us which distinguishes right from wrong. We have a sense of aesthetics. We have intellect. So these are the things which relate to a spiritual side of our existence. Of course, the material side of our existence needs a lot of nourishment, the physical side. So we eat, we drink, we hang out, we go for dinners, we go for parties, and all sorts of things that are able to nourish our body. And of course, the daily food as well, the breakfast, the lunch, the dinner, the tea, etc., etc. So they're all meant for our physical development. But you see, there is another plane, which is the spiritual plane. And fasting basically is something which escalates the fodder of the spiritual side of your personality. And that is God connection. You see, what happens is that your own soul is also in need of food, just as your physical body is in need for food. So you see, this food is something that you need to understand is not just the requirement of your physical being, it's the requirement of your spiritual being also. And that spiritual being and that physical being, they seem to get entangled all the year round. They are mixed up. They are, in fact, if you allow me to say, I'll say this, that the physical being or the requirements of the physical being, they get the better of the requirements of the spiritual being in all parts of the year, because our physical needs can be seen, whereas our spiritual needs are always difficult to grasp because we just cannot see them, although we might be able to feel them. But you see, physical being is something which gets the better of our spiritual being all the year round, although we have been prescribed a lot of practices during those 11 months, and of course including the 12th month of Ramadan as well, which keeps our connection with God alive. For example, we pray, we offer, we give in charity a lot, we are connected to God by understanding and studying the Quran. But this is a sort of a tussle that is always there, in which your physical being does not let your spiritual being get up. You see, it's like something of a struggle in which your physical being is always overpowering your spiritual being, and it's always under the physical being that spiritual being is being pushed. It tries to come up, and then of course the struggle goes on. And what happens in Ramadan is that the needs of your physical being, they are suddenly put to one side. So you see, what happens is that your spiritual being gets the time to grow. For 1 month, your physical being is given very little interference, is allowed very little interference in your spiritual being. Because once you forsake eating, once you forsake drinking and other desires, the carnal desires, of course what happens is your spiritual being starts to breathe, so to speak. As if it was in stress all the year round, it was not being able to breathe properly. But as soon as you lifted that burden of the physical being from itself, it arose. and it started to develop, it started to nurture, it started to grow in a way that you felt as a better human being. And it is an experience that we all go through, that in Ramadan, all of us, when we do this collective fasting exercise, it becomes easier for us to do good things. So you see, those 13, 14 or 15 hours, or even the rest of the day, is the time in which we always relish, we always look back and remember that we had a wonderful Ramadan because of the fact that we were able to do this, and we were able to connect to God. So you see, to a student who is studying in a university or a college or a school, what we would like to explain is that if you just go on nourishing your physical being, it'll become fat, it'll become fit, it'll become sturdy, but your spiritual side will continue to be weakened unless you provide it with its fodder. And all the year round, as I said, there are a lot of exercises, a lot of practices that we can go through which makes it strong. But there is 1 month completely in which we devote ourselves to actually nourish our spiritual being and lift off the desires which our physical beings has, and it tends to overpower the spiritual being. So you see, on the spiritual plane, you feel a person who is a better person during Ramadan most of the time. And this is the reason why we have been asked to fast at least 1 month in a compulsory way. Other than that, of course, we have those optional fasts that we can go through. But as I would just sum up my whole suggestion here, or my whole statement here in trying to diverge the wisdom of fasting, is that had human beings existed only on the physical plane, there would have been perhaps no fasting, because of the fact that our own soul does not need any nourishment as such, or go through such a month-long workshop in which we are able to do a certain exercise or pass through certain phases. But because of the fact that we have to acknowledge that we exist on a spiritual plane, and if you are spiritually strong, look what happens. So if you're spiritually strong, you'll be a truthful person. If you're spiritually strong, you'll be more sympathetic. You'll be more connected to God. You'll be more considerate to other people, even more kind to other people. You'll be a person who is always telling the truth, and for that person, telling the truth would come naturally. So you see, your character, basically, which is a manifestation of your spiritual being, that will grow in stature. Your character is basically not a representation of your physical being. Your physical being is basically like your body, which of course can be groomed and which can be built, and you will become a more fit person. You'll become a more attractive person as far as your physique is concerned. But what about that spiritual part? So you see, if you don't acknowledge that physical part, you'll tend to lose that grip on your spiritual part, and that is what our religion does not want to. And that is precisely the reason because of which earlier religions, all divine religions, have prescribed fasting. It's not something which has been done in the last Sharia for the first time. It was always there. So you see, if you understand this stress, you will have this urge to fight off that period in which maybe your fasting is making you uncomfortable, because now you know that you are doing it for a cause. You're doing it for a purpose. You are doing it for a certain objective, and that objective is to groom your character, to become a stronger individual, to take pressures, to take the brunt of life, and of course contribute as much as you can.